Welcome to Conversations in Music. I'm your host, Byrd, and I have a question for you. What does Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, Justin Timberlake, Michael McDonald, and the Backstreet Boys all have in common? You don't know? I'll tell you. They all called on our next guest to play bass for them. Off stage, he's a kind and gentle soul, but on stage, he's a monster bass player. He's also a producer, a songwriter, a family man, and a constant professional. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for my friend and brother, Mr. Sam Sims. Welcome to the conversation.
Well, man, let's start at the beginning. Let's start back. Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're from, right? What was happening musically in Chattanooga when you was coming up?
Well, for me, it was more, I started in, obviously playing around the house, just banging on stuff and dancing at little, family gatherings and stuff like that. But it started for me. My mom put me in this thing called a Chattanooga Boys Choir organization. And what they do is that you go and audition as a singer, basically. And then
Okay.
from there, they teach you how to read. Basically, after the first couple of years, you end up touring around singing in this choir, Chattanooga Boys Choir. Been around for years. So that's kind of where it started for me, in a
Okay.
formal sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said they taught you how to. So I started kind of the same way, man. I started classical, so the reading was important for me.
Right.
From an educational standpoint, how important do you think that is looking back as you got older and saw the opportunities that was afforded to you and saw the education come into play? How did that
Well, it's very important because it's your kind of like your first uh, opportunity to actually do some kind of formal music that without, different than singing in the shower or doing anything like that. This is the first chance you're singing with an organization
mm-hmm.
that is training you to use your voice, like training you to, learn how to read. And it wasn't, it was very, I don't even know what you call it. He did some kind of fun songs, but it was more like a lot of, I have to go back and research this stuff, but it's kind of like very, we sang in Latin, we sang in German. It was all kind of, I don't know what you would call that, Baroque periods. I mean, it was just different periods of music, but it was just
Mm-hmm.
quiet. It was more very. I don't have the term for that.
Yeah.
Type of music, but that's what it was. It wasn't like we're going out here singing, "Here Comes the Bride" or anything like that. It was serious, for a 6-year-old,
Yeah.
7-year-old.
Gotcha. So when did you get your first bass? When did that come, or was there another instrument even before that?
Well, yeah, before bass, I was playing drums and guitar, which kind of led me to bass.
Okay.
I started on drums, just beating down in the garage until I put a hole in them things, and my mom was like, "Okay, get rid of that,"
Yeah.
So I got rid of the drums, got me a little guitar, and I started playing. Kept playing bass lines on the guitar for the most part. So there was a guy in my neighborhood named Greg Jones who had a band next door to my grandmother's house. So I would go over there and hang out with them. They were teenagers.
Yeah.
And so basically he kind of said, kind of told me, you need to get a bass, man, because you're playing up all the bass lines on the guitar. So that's what I did. And I guess I got my first bass around the age of 12.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but I was already playing, Isaac Hayes and all this stuff on guitar,
Yeah. That's interesting though. You say you had a guitar, but you was already hearing bass lines,
Yeah.
which means you gravitated to that frequency and to, that personality of an instrument quick.
Yep. I mean, I played some guitar, certain. I went to around that time I was in a prep school, so a lot of guys, probably 3 of us in my whole class were black. Everything else was white. So they were playing, all the musicians were playing, Van Halen and.
So tune your ear to something else.
Exactly.
I got you. That helps. It
Yeah,
helps. Yeah.
Stairway to
Yeah.
Heaven and all these real popular pop songs at that time, pop rock songs. So
Hmm.
I started playing, I played a little guitar, just to learn the guitar lines. It was killing, but ultimately I was playing bass on the guitar, until I got well, actually I was already playing bass by that time. I had my first bass around that time. So,
Hmm.
but I still
Did
had,
you have a formal teacher on bass?
no, I didn't have, I had the guy in my neighborhood, just, just basically making sure I was in the groove. And I kind of
Yeah.
picked it up pretty fast. It wasn't hard for me to pick up. I just I had already picked it up earlier on guitar, so for the most part, I was just basically getting my hands uh, trained to play, bigger strings, bigger necks,
Hmm.
longer neck,
Yeah.
and just for me, get familiar with the different tones,
Yeah.
that the bass is going to get as opposed to guitar. So, I was already, I guess, by the time I'm a teenager, I'm basically on bass at that point. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you attended Morehouse in Atlanta. Is that how you gravitated to Atlanta? Or did someone else pull you
yeah,
here originally?
yeah. No, I went to school here, and I started playing in the jazz band here at the school, and started. I'm sure you know William Green, but we had a little fusion band
Hmm.
at that time. It was my first. I would say it was my first introduction to jazz, but it was more like fusion jazz. Is kind of when that all started for me.
Yeah.
We were doing before that. It was all high school was like big band and handbell choirs,
Yeah.
and by that time I had taken myself out of the boys' choir, so I was done with that. I was maybe just playing big band and handbell choir, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Morehouse was all just jazz band for the most part.
So did you study music at Morehouse?
Nope, I studied business at Morehouse.
You studied business. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So,
and at that time the music program wasn't really, it wasn't that great in my opinion. We did have a great sax player named Rod Smith,
hmm.
and so he kind of taught us a lot, taught us a little history of jazz, and he was really into it. Real killing straight ahead player. So
Hmm.
he also was a professor of the jazz band. So
Okay.
so he kind of guided us in that sense. But yeah, I wasn't pretty much self taught up to that point.
Yeah. So you didn't plan on being a musician. You had other plans.
I did. And one time I thought about transferring to Georgia State because they had a killer uh, big band. I used to just hang out. With Sonny and Sonny Emery and some of these other guys just had a killer big band, so I would go hang out down there a lot. But
Hmm.
Morehouse just wasn't a place to get a music degree, so I figured
Yeah.
I was in business, and I figured out how I'm gonna get the music from that point. I was
Hmm.
already there. I was 2 years in. I didn't want to start over, go somewhere else. So,
Yeah. What
oh
year was this, by the way?
yeah. This is the early '80s, basically. So
Ah, okay.
we were fusion was kind of big then. Jeff Lorber fusion
Hmm.
and who else? Yellow Jackets were coming up, and all these killer bands. Lee Ritenour and you know,
Yeah.
Bob James was around. Marcus Miller was doing his thing with David Sanborn. It was kind of a great mixture of music.
Yeah. Real
So,
musicianship.
yes,
I'm trying to get a little history there to put the scene together to figure out how everything kind of progressed for you through that time. Because I didn't realize that you studied business in school. I thought you went for music. So how did you couple the two? How did that business degree help you once you did get into the industry?
well, let me go back a little bit now. When I first got there, I was doing engineering for a minute.
Ah,
I was going to
okay.
do a five year program through Georgia Tech. You did 4 years at Morehouse and then another year at Tech.
Hmm.
But around that time, we started gigging a lot. So
Hmm.
if I'm playing a gig you know at the time you could play 3 or 4 hours a night. So if I got back to school at 2, 3 in the morning, and I got to get to graphics lab by 6,
Yeah.
it just,
Yeah.
It wasn't going to happen for me. So I knew right then I had to change my major. So that's when I changed the business, you know.
Oh, okay.
Because
Okay.
a lot of graphic stuff, you have to be there real early, and work's got to be done. And there's no way
Mhm.
I'll get it done if I'm out playing till three in the morning. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know if my parents know this. I was doing the same thing. I got introduced to my first studio when I was in college.
yeah,
I just stay in there all night, man, and go straight to class. Like I ain't even been to sleep, you
exactly.
know. So I get that.
Yeah,
Sorry, mom and dad.
yeah,
But yeah, man, I kind of got thrust into it and fell in love with the process of the studio and started gigging, you know, because
yeah.
being from Selma, I didn't have those influences. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
there was no scene like that. So once I did find a scene when I got to Birmingham, it was like, hey man, this is something new and this is something that I just gravitated to and being in the studio literally to 6, 7 in the morning. I ain't took a shower, I ain't took nothing, just jump in the car, go to class and then class 9, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
I
So let's
understand that.
fast forward a little bit to when you made the jump to LA.
Hmm.
What what caused that? Like what was that transition period for you?
Well, once I got out of school, which was mid '80s or so, I decided me and Sonny were living together one time, and he had gotten a call to I think it was Joe Sample.
Hmm.
I think he did Jean Luc Ponty just as we got out of school, and then he ended up doing Joe Sample. But he had to move to LA to do that, because Joe
Ah,
kind of hands on, kind of wants you to be there, So it's easier travel wise and rehearsal, everything.
right, right.
Flying you out every time something's got to happen. So he moved, and so at this time I just kind of played around Atlanta for about a year and a half, just really getting my chops together. So I talked to him
Hmm.
about it. I said, "Man, I'm thinking about moving. What's the scene I like?" He goes, "Well," he said, "Well, the only thing is," he says, "nobody out here is playing any better than you are. They just here."
Yeah.
So at that point, I made my mind up. I had maybe 6 months uh, left on my lease that I was going to move to LA in January. So that January, I guess it was, '87, something like that. I'd moved to Los Angeles. Just got in my car, drove cross country, got my mom's gas card, and $200 in my pocket, just basically going on faith.
Oh man.
So he said I could stay with him for a while.
Yeah.
He had another roommate that was from Atlanta too. That was
Hmm.
his tech.
Ah.
So yeah, I slept on that couch, man, for 6 months or a year, whatever it was, until I guess about maybe 5 or 6 months into it. Uh, it's a funny story. I was, just in the apartment, practicing and
Hmm.
basically starving for the most part. Going out buying candy bars and stuff like that. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want to keep calling home for money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
uh, this guy calls me. You probably know him. His name Brian Simpson.
Hmm.
And he says he had gone all the way down the list. He had a gig, and I was the last one on the list. Somebody had recommended me. They call this guy. He's new in town, so he called me. Of course, I'm ecstatic. It's my first gig. Well, let me go back because I'm forgetting the whole segment of why I moved out there in the first place.
Hmm.
Indugu Chancellor
Oh yeah.
had a band, and he was looking for a bass player for I think it was like January. He was going to have
Hmm.
auditions. So that was the reason. That was the time frame for me to move.
Hmm.
Uh,
It was an opportunity.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it all started, really.
Yeah.
And to this day, I thank him for you know kind of spearheading my career because at that time he was coming off Billie Jean.
Ah,
So
yeah.
he played on Billie Jean. So every time he did a gig, it's packed.
Hmm.
Everybody's there.
He got the juice.
Right, Patrice Rushen, all these people that were hot at that time,
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into LA scene. So
Hmm.
I went out there to audition for Ndugu, got the gig, and
Nice.
Patrice was actually in the band, so that really helped. You know, Sonny was playing, and a couple other young cats like myself at that time. So, but yeah, that he just kind of put me down, man, and everybody was asking, well, who's the young cats in town?
Yeah.
One thing, what I've learned is that it's a very small business.
Yeah. Very.
And you get a good reputation, you can get a bad reputation just as fast.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for me, I got a pretty good reputation, and phone started ringing from that point. I started getting calls for auditions and a lot of local gigs.
Yeah.
But local gigs were different back then because you might you go to a gig, you might be playing with. I think I did one local gig. I was playing with Harvey Mason just on something at USC. So I'm
yeah. Yeah.
That's just how it was happening back then for me. Because it's a local scene. It's like all the cats play around town in Atlanta. They do the same thing in LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or Chicago or New York. It's just everywhere has a local scene. Exactly. It's just who's on that particular scene.
Exactly.
LA had the cats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was great for that. So I'm ended up playing with guys I've been listening to for the last 10 years as I'm learning how to play.
Yeah.
So
on the job training.
Exactly.
That's cool. So tell me about one of your first big auditions, man. Like one that you was like, okay, if I land this one here, I can. It was worth the move. What was one of the first ones?
Probably the first audition on the pop scene was this Sheena Easton, I think it was. He was hot coming off the hit records with Babyface had written, and same kind of thing. I had a reputation for coming in and just being prepared for the most part because a lot of guys like certain gigs like George Howard, even Greg Fillinganes that called me for a TV show he was doing, and they didn't really know me. I just had a kind of a reputation for showing up ready to play. So that's why I wanted to keep it. Now, it's always important to be prepared before you come to a gig.
Absolutely.
It's possible. But Sheena Easton was probably my first audition on the pop side. Well, where there's going to be a tour for 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Every week you're going to get paid for 8 months.
Oh, man. And
then at that point, even when the tour was over, she was still doing dates, like doing a month in Vegas or 2 weeks in Atlantic City, or she got into the whole casino thing after that as well. But that was the first, I guess, big tour for me. Yeah. And I actually replaced somebody else because they just didn't show up.
Wow. So how long was this after you moved to LA? If you can just give me like a rough time frame.
2 years.
Wow. So it took 2 years for you to start getting some traction.
Well, on that side, on the pop side, during that 2 years, it took me about, I think, probably 5 or 6 months after that call from Brian. I was working pretty steadily around town, and then doing Indugu's thing. Like from Indugu, I ended up getting, I think it was Joe Stamper. I played with him for a while, and basically subbing. So I'm subbing for bass player on Joe Stamper, Crusaders at the time. They were doing some Crusader dates, and he was doing some quartet dates. Oh, and then from that, Gerald Albright just happened to be at the rehearsal studio that day. He sees me playing with Joe and hires me for his gig when he had his first record came out.
Yeah,
it was me, Donnell, Chucky Booker, Patrick Morton, and that was his first band for his first record. And that's just because he just had seen me with Joe Sample. So I mean, just one thing just led to another, man. I call them blessings, of course, because being in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely.
You don't know. You're not thinking, I'm focusing on Joe because he's cussing me out as we.
Was he tough? Was he a tough cookie, man? He believed in that old school hazing?
Rehearsals were always great. But as soon as you get on that gig, man, anything can happen. I mean, you can ask Nathan, you can ask John Patitucci, Well, I talked to all of them. They were like, "Oh yeah, you went through boot camp, basically."
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I mean, I felt honored just to be in that, in that name of folks who have been through that with Joe.
yeah,
So he
yeah.
just on the gig, he just wanted to go somewhere else. It's not about the record. He just wanted to
Explore.
exactly, and you
Yeah,
got to follow him.
yeah. True
So,
improvising.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. It'll make a man out of you quick.
Oh yeah,
It'll make a man out of you quick.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
mean, once I got out of that camp, I could play with anybody at any time at that point. But
There you go.
going through it, you kind of intimidated because it's
Hmm.
simple, So some
Yeah.
little 24-year-old kid, this dude's been doing this before you were born, so
Right.
it's kind of intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but anyway, I had the same feeling when we did Bob James too.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
the same kind of thing. He's the same age as my mom, and he's
Yeah.
jamming.
Yeah. It's a respect thing, man. When I find myself on stage and I have that aha moment, like you're really here. You know what I mean? Like, but and at first it used to be uncomfortable, and then after a while I got to the point where I'm like, I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. You
Exactly.
know.
Exactly.
And then once I got that mind frame, and once I really settled into, okay, you got the talent, you're prepared,
Right.
and they call you because they trust you. Just trust yourself and go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it took me a while to get to that place, and there's still some moments, even now, where, you get
Yeah.
the second guessing every now and then, but once you settle in and just do what you do,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, okay.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's easier now because I'm that guy.
yeah,
Especially
yeah,
about James and some of these other ones. I'm the elder statesman now, so it's not
yeah,
it's not too much I haven't seen at this point, But
yeah.
after 30 years of doing it professionally for the most part.
Hmm.
But yeah, and I love those feelings because it kind of keeps you in the now, on the edge. You got to be ready, that kind of thing. But
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely. So let's go to this pop scene, man. You mentioned the pop scene a while ago because you was the man on the pop scene for a long time. And I named we got Justin Timberlake, we got
mhm.
the Backstreet Boys, we got Janet, we got Mariah. Like those were the pop idols in that day, man. Like how did you get on that circuit? Because that's a whole nother circuit too. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? That touring circuit. So, and then it requires some different skills too. It requires keyboard bass. It
right.
requires a lot of other stuff. So, kind of take us down that path of how you tapped into that and became comfortable on that scene.
Well, that scene is actually easier than doing the jazz scene. Honestly,
Ah, okay.
because jazz, it's a different mindset. Once you're in that mindset, you can flip it. I mean, we had so many great moments with George Howard, man. I can't tell you, and Gerald too. And
Hmm.
you're just in a different mind space for that. Now, for the pop thing, it's kind of like you got to play those parts that people have been listening to. There's a reason those records are number one. There's a reason these artists have sold 10 million records. Not
Right.
they're not there to see you. So,
Hmm.
or me, I should say. So, I always try to bring my personality to whatever the bass line is, but I'm trying to play the bass line that's on the record, unless there's not
Right.
one.
Right.
So that, and then having a good sound. I think that was very important for me getting a lot of those gigs. Now
Hmm.
sometimes just again, it's reputation. Is you know, I think by this time I had been in LA maybe 3 or 4 years, so I started getting calls for those auditions. Now, what happened? Let's see. After the Sheena Easton tour, Paul Abdul becomes really hot. So she has auditions in LA, like a cattle call. So there's like a ton of musicians there.
Hmm.
So I'm the only one playing synth bass.
Ah.
There was no,
Hmm.
I mean, she did have some bass on her stuff, but for the most part, it was all synth bass. So everybody comes in playing bass, you're not going to sound like the record.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had programmed all the sounds, and I came
Yeah.
on my rig, and and we slayed them. I mean, it was just because it was familiar to her ears, We had a vibe more or less, and
Right.
we actually came up with arrangements for her show before we came up with arrangement for the audition.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
they weren't expecting that, so it was an element of surprise. And again, sometimes they put all of us together. They put me and Sonny and Daryl Smith and I think it was Tony Maiden from Rufus. I mean, come on, we're gonna come up with something because the music, some of it wasn't going anywhere. So let's try this. So we just brought it to the audition.
Right.
And they loved it. It ended up being in the show, as a matter of fact.
Wow. That's what's up.
So, and then from that, Janet came to that show.
Mm-hmm.
So, same thing. She saw some of us on that tour. She had another audition. So, who gets the calls? The same guys.
Yeah.
So, it's like, it's the tour managers, there's only a handful of them working in the business.
Mm-hmm.
They all know the musicians. They all know who's cool,
who's hot,
who's fun, who can play.
Yeah.
So when Janet was auditioning, it happened to be the same tour manager as Paula.
Oh.
So what did he do? He called us all to audition for her.
Yeah.
So again, it was a ton of guys there, but again, I came in with the synth bass. That's all Jimmy Jam. I mean, there was a little
all
bit,
it is. Yeah.
a couple songs, but for the most part, you can't play "What Have You Done for Me Lately" on bass and make it sound like the record. It just don't work.
Yeah.
So that's basically how I got the gig. Just basically playing the parts for the most part with the sounds.
Yeah. What year was that you started with Janet?
93.
93.
93. Yeah. That's when That's the Way Love Goes came out. Yeah. The first tour was Chucky Booker and those guys, Tommy Oregon, the Oregon Brothers, DOA, killer band.
Yeah. I got a little clip to take you down memory lane for a second.
Oh, wow. So young. That's funny. Wow.
So tell me, 30,000 screaming fans, and you got Janet Jackson saying your name night in and night out. What's that feeling, man?
Well, that's great. Obviously, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was Velvet Rope tour, right?
Yeah.
Which was what year?
That was 98, 99. That was about
98.
Like started in 98, we ended in 99. They went for a year.
Yeah. So you had been with her for 5-6 years at that point.
Yeah, but we did a tour. She did a tour like say 93 to 95.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended say summer 95.
Mm-hmm.
And then she didn't do another tour until 98. The next, it takes 2-3 years to make a record, So
yeah.
So the next tour wasn't until 98, 99.
Yeah, a lot of musicians know that tour, and a lot of her fan favorites know that tour. What do you remember about that time frame? You say you were so young, and I'm sure you was on top of the world, one of the biggest pop tours in the world. Like, what was that time like, man?
That's probably the pinnacle of my career, I think, during that time. I'd say that from the early 90s, I did all the 90s, I think, for the most part. That was, and then tours were you know, were at least 8 months, a year long during that time, sometimes longer.
Yeah.
You know, that first tour, when the Janet tour, that thing went for, you know, a year and a half,
Hmm.
almost 2 years, you know. We took a little break, but so I think, you know, it was great. Obviously it did a lot for my uh career. You know, people definitely know who you are from that tour, from
Right.
Rebel Road.
Hmm.
And it's also was very financially rewarding, you know, because you
Hmm.
own something steady for a year, and it's great money. So
Yeah.
give you a chance to really save. You
Yeah.
know, matter of fact, I'm in this house now because of who was the first tour? Because of that tour, actually, after the
Yeah.
Rebel tour.
Yeah.
You know, because I was building this house as I'm on that tour.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, none of this was here. It's just a big empty room, not finished.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, it was definitely a high point of my career as far
Hmm.
as, you know, being seen, being heard. You know, we did a lot of TV appearances and stuff like that. You know, so everything you know, everything that you're doing is on a high level. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
ele- so that definitely helps you with future, which
Yeah.
is the next thing I think after that was Mariah.
Hmm.
But by this time, everybody knows who you are because they've seen that video or seen you
Right.
at the show or, you
Yeah.
know, and that's how Mariah came about. Randy Jackson just called me up. I didn't. There was no audition. He just said, "Hey,
He
I
was
can't.
in the door.
Or can you do a tour?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, "Sure."
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Now you mentioned something I was going to talk about a little bit later, but I'm going to talk about it now. Um, you talk about the financial reward for doing stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, what kind of money management, man, and investing do you do when you got that kind of money rolling there? Most young people, you know, you're in your 20s, whatever, you ain't never seen that kind of money. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
like what kind of money management advice would you give, and investment advice would you give when you seeing that kind of money night in and night out for months or weeks or even a couple of years at a time?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, you're going to pay some taxes on that anyway. So, and you're taxed at a high rate because of the salary that you're making. It's almost like 40%
Yeah.
tax rate because
Hmm.
of that tour, because of the money that you're making. They think you're making that for the rest of your
Right.
life, but you're
Right.
not. So, I mean, of course, you get some of that back. But what I did was we invested in real estate at a young age, for the most part.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you're talking, you know, 20 years ago. So we, over the course of time, pretty much every tour, every year, we bought another property. So
Hmm.
that's what I think. I think I had invested in the stock market some, but um, to me, I thought real estate was going to be the answer.
Yeah.
For you know, I think now the stock market is probably the answer. But
Yeah. Did you have advice from anybody during that time? Or is just something that you just like, I want to, did you seek advice and counsel with what to do? Or did they provide you guys with
no,
somebody to
I
say,
had a few friends that had done really well in real estate, so that's kind of why I
okay,
got into it. I do wish I had gotten some more advice on the stock market because I think that's a winner too if you can afford to stay in it for a while. You know, it's not a if you some guys like to day trade. That's not what I'm looking for something 10 years from now. Where is
right,
it going to be? And
right.
that's kind of what I did with real estate too. I know that I can put this little money over here,
Hmm.
rent it out. I know
Hmm.
10, 15 years down the line, I'm going to be able to cash in, which is what we're doing now for the most part.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
So you saw those and you're seeing those investments from 15, 20 years ago pay off right now,
Yes.
20 years later. So it's the long game.
Yes.
You gotta think the long game.
Well, in Atlanta is a long game
Yeah.
because we bought all of them in the Atlanta area. But
Uh,
my biggest regret is not buying one in LA because it's different in LA. You could buy a property. I know some guys bought property and they kept it for 2, 3 years and double their money. just because LA, the prices, what do you call it? It just appreciates so fast because everybody wants to move to LA. I'm going to LA. Every family in the world wants to have a house in LA. So people come from all over the world to buy a place in LA. So if you're smart, which if I could go back and do it, that's one thing I would have done, But it was but you got to have, at that time they wanted 20% down. To get in the house. So those houses out there, even the small box was $350. So you got to come to the table with $70,000, and that's just a fixer upper.
Right.
So I just thought at that time I was kind of coming back and forth to Atlanta anyway, seeing my now wife, but at that time she was my girlfriend. So I just I was looking around here. You could buy a $200,000 home. You can
be balling.
like $2 million in LA. So I was like, man, maybe I should think about this. So So when I guess when we got the Janet tour, that's when I decided to buy a place here. That was my first home. It was a little condo downtown Atlanta. I was still living in LA.
Wow.
But I bought a little place downtown. So that's kind of where it started for me.
But Atlanta was booming at that time too, because the '96 Olympics, and I wasn't here during that time, but I always hear that period was when Atlanta was really, really taking off. The music scene, as well as other stuff that happened surrounding the Olympics. So that probably was a good investment too. Yeah.
It was great. I mean, and I was right downtown, right in the mix, And what happened was I was on tour during the Olympics. So I wanted to rent my place out and do that whole thing. I just didn't get around to doing that. But a lot of people found out about Atlanta after the Olympics, and I think that's why it became so crowded at that point. I saw the growth. Right after the Olympics, it just exploded.
Yeah.
So I think I don't remember. I think we had like 2.5 million people back then. I have to research that, but what is it now, 7 or something?
It's not that now. It's not that now. I'll tell you that for sure.
I mean, it just exploded.
Yeah. So you brought up your wife and family. When you're on the road like that, and obviously you say you was coming back and forth, but how do you create a balance, man? Some type of balance that makes sense for family. You get kids, and then all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we always made a point. It was easier before we had kids because she could just come out. If she could take the weekend off and meet me in wherever the tour was. She could just come out. Once we had kids, we had to think about it a little more in depth. So, we just decided that we would not go past 2-3 weeks without seeing each other or not family being together. So if I'm on the road for 2-3 weeks, we've already got a trip planned
somewhere down there. Yeah.
To either come out, or maybe I was coming through Atlanta or somewhere close, Charlotte, or something, where we just, try to keep that balance because she, the good thing about Cherise is that she understands what I do because that's all she's ever known.
Right.
I was working a corporate gig and then decided to be a musician.
Yeah. Right.
She met me. I was doing this already. Matter of fact, that's how we met.
Nice.
So it took some adjusting though, because if I'm always on the road and always gone, obviously, a lot of other things could happen. You get grounded and being true to yourself. So and being true to them. So I always made it a point to be that person, So we just try to see each other every 2 or 3 weeks, never any longer than that, regardless of what it costs,
Right. It was very intentional. So what I take from it, you're saying you got to be intentional about it. If you want to do it, you got to commit to it and be intentional about it.
Exactly.
And don't let the circumstances or the obstacles get in the way of that. It's just something that this is a priority and this is what I got to do.
Yep.
That's good stuff.
We're gonna spend a certain amount of money on just being a family,
Right. Right.
even though I'm gone a year.
Yeah.
So you got to do it. Otherwise it's not gonna work.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I'll tell you too, when I met you, when we first met, you mentioned William Green a while ago. I met you. I don't even know if you remember this, man. I met you at 290 one night.
You remember? Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. And I came up and introduced myself, man. And you was like, yeah, I'll see you around, man. You brush me off. Nah, I'm playing. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. I'm just messing with you. Nah, but man, once we got a chance to really start hanging out, I noticed how serious you took your health. You was like one of the first guys that made me conscious of what I was eating and just stuff like that. So when you're touring, man, or what made you health conscious? Let me ask that question.
Well, this happened when I was living in LA. At that time, everybody was, there was a lot of talk about the health industry and
Mm-hmm.
and historically, we as Black people, we're always end up with diabetes, high blood pressure, what else, heart problems, all this kind of,
Yeah.
So I was already leaning that way before I got to LA, but once I got there, it became intentional once again. I stopped eating meat,
Mm-hmm.
and I have high cholesterol. It's just hereditary, basically. It's just
Mm-hmm.
genes.
Yeah.
So it's always been high, so I just try to keep an eye on it. I'll try to eat, stuff with low saturated fats, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of greens, a lot of fish,
Yeah.
stuff like that, a lot of peanuts.
Yeah.
And I don't say it works for everybody, but it works for me just to kind of keep my weight down,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just feel better.
Yeah. Did you feel like it helped you when you were on the road? Like managing stuff like that, because I've been on the road with cats and musicians is 2 o'clock in the morning, Waffle House, and you know what I mean, and we're not getting enough sleep and all that kind of stuff, and before long your body just wears.
Yeah.
So like, did you see it help in that aspect too?
Yeah, I never tried to do that. I never tried to eat. I mean, the worst thing we did was eat on a bus after the gig.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's at 11 o'clock. That's not 3 a.m. And I'm not even sure if that's a true. People say you should eat after a certain time, and I'm not even
Yeah.
sure that even matters. I think it's what you eat is
True.
what you know.
Yeah. Portions too. Yeah.
Exactly. You eat a
Yeah.
small portion of whatever it is, then you're not gonna have that much to digest. So I always, they always had like wings and pizza and stuff like that, and I would do it every now and then, but you can't do that every night. The good thing about these tours is that you got so many people catering to whatever you need. I mean, they'll get you some healthy food if that's what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they didn't, I just ate a small portion. I would, if it was something like you said, chicken wings, a pizza, I might have a few wings and a slice of pizza. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna chase it with some red wine, to get the fat out of my blood.
Yeah. Yeah. So while we're talking about health, I know a couple years ago you started having. I remember I came to you when I started having problems with my hands and stuff, man. I know you had to have a surgery a couple years ago.
Yep.
So from health reasons, is it something that you saw early on that was affecting your hands or certain bases or something like what caused that kind of thing that you think may have, if you were aware of it a little bit earlier, may have helped with that for like bass players out there?
I think you gotta stretch. I think a lot of it could be your genes and stuff like that. I think I have a history of arthritis and stuff like that in my family.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, I think I was just playing so much and not really stretching, resting like I probably should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
We take that stuff for granted. I know.
yeah, yeah. You just think you're gonna be young forever, and then you just, if you plan all the time,
Yeah.
eventually but all the doctors call it an overuse injury. It's like athletes do something too
Mm-hmm.
much, constantly, the same way, the same here or down here, the same exact way for years. Eventually, it breaks down. Even if I'd have just adjusted my strap or just moved the bass up or down a little bit, it probably would have helped, Yeah, I was just advised, just try to eat healthier and stretch. You have all these little stretches for your muscles, arms and forearms, and hands too. Finger exercises, little stuff to keep your dexterity up.
Yeah.
Stuff I never even thought about.
None of us do, man. I say none of us do. I don't think, especially younger guys, man. They go to the bass and they just go, or silent drummers, and they just go, and then but you can't consistently tour,
right?
Playing 4 nights a week, 3-hour shows or 2.5-hour shows,
right?
And not take care of your body and not take care, the stuff that actually is getting you paid,
right?
You know what I mean? So that makes a lot of sense, man. You may not see that first, but the long run, it'll show itself.
Right.
But I think that stuff is very, very important, man, for younger cats to know, because we don't think about that stuff when we're in our 20s and 30s. And then 40s and 50s come, and it's like now your body is breaking down. Your body ain't got no more, you ain't got no stamina anymore.
Exactly.
So yeah, all them late nights, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the mornings, it's cool sometimes, but you can't do that, consistently, and smoking and drinking, all that stuff too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but man, a lot of people don't know too that one of the things that I found out a couple of years ago is that you're one of the first subs for American Idol. You're a bass sub for American Idol behind obviously the MD is Ricky Minor, who's a bass player. But when Ricky has to step out, you're one of the guys that come in on that platform. So how did you guys build your relationship, and take us through like a daily thing of what an idol entails?
Oof. Well, let me go back again. I met Ricky when I first moved to LA, and he was music director for Whitney Houston at the time. So I think once, I guess he kind of carved his way into the whole TV thing. So, I mean, you had to talk to him about it all. But I mean, and I thought, man, what a great, you did it, Yeah. You found another way to do this on a high level and not have to travel the world to do it. I mean, they have to travel sometimes, but for part, he's sitting in some studio in LA or New York, So I don't know. I just think he respects me. And again, you're going to be on time. You're going to show up ready to play. You got to know how to read in that camp, though.
Yeah.
I tell you, the first time he called me, I think it was the Image Awards. It's like I was at a track meet and got left in the blocks, boy. I got, and this is the thing, they say rehearsal started at 11. I got there like 10 till. That's not, you got to get there at 10 so you can look over it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you just cold. I mean, he's like, okay, number 57, at 11 o'clock, they starting. Number 57, here we go. 1, 2, 3. I hadn't even looked at it yet.
So you got a book of songs sitting there.
Yeah, it's like bumpers and, some songs, and it's just play-ons, playoffs. It's TV.
Yeah.
And they just go like, okay, here we go. Number 20. 2, 3, 4. You in it. In the blocks.
Yeah.
So then, he had to stop me for a minute, and that's embarrassing, bro.
Yeah.
You sit next to Paul Jackson and Dave Malone and, all the horn guys, everybody's there early. This is my first horn. I did my first time, so I didn't really know what to expect. But it was a valuable lesson that first time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it ended up being great, and so I think he's got a few guys that he calls from time to time, but he did call me to do Idol, amongst other things, and man, he was actually there. He just didn't want to play.
Okay.
It was like Hell Week.
Yeah. So he called you in for the mess.
Oh man, it was nuts.
Yeah.
I think that was the most craziest thing I've ever done for him. I mean, talking about 75 songs, and they changed the keys on the spot. Most of the songs they just pop stuff anyway, easy stuff anyway. But they changed the arrangements on the spot. I mean, it's everything. You just got to be. It's you don't get settled in any of it.
It's always it's moving. It's just a
moving. They bring a chart right in front of you. You got like a minute or two to look at it. Okay, go. It's just on.
Yeah.
So it's like steroids, but man, again, that's a great experience. And I asked him, I said, man, I can't be didn't do this. That's why I got you here, the real me. Walking around talking to folks, you know.
Yeah.
Networking, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. But man, it was intense, you know.
Yeah, man. So we in a COVID era right now, man. Gigs stopped. Everything's just frozen, man. How have you found yourself maneuvering during this time? Like, what have you figured out musically?
Well, I think, let me start personally. I realized I don't need as much as I thought I did. You know,
from what perspective you mean?
I mean, you know, I guess for the last 25, 30 years, I'm always looking for the next thing. I'm looking for the next gig. Or what's happening there? Or somebody's audition, let me make that call. See if some, you know, it never ends. And I always talk to students about this. When you're a full-time musician, it doesn't end because you got a gig. That gig's eventually going to end.
Yeah,
so
it's seasonal.
Thinking about the next, or making contacts, or calling people, or going out see other. You know, not that you have to be intentional about it, but you just have to kind of be in the moment for the most part. If that makes any sense, you know. Yes, you got a gig. I'm doing whatever, but at some point, 2 months from now or a month from now, that gig's going to be over. So, and I hate what used to bother me the most is that, you know, you've been out for a year, you come back, nobody knows you're home. Everybody thinks you're still out. So you don't get for 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, but what I've been doing since this COVID thing hit, it was kind of scary at first because my whole schedule cleared from March.
Yeah, likewise.
The rest of the year. So, you know, I started writing and just kind of working, kind of getting into my own music that I've been wanting to do for years, but I'm always distracted because of the gig, or I'm always trying to make sure my family is cool and taken care of, you know. But, I realized I can kind of rest a little bit and kind of work on my own creativity. So that's kind of what I've been doing, and practicing some, you know, trying to get my hands back. They're slowly coming back after the reasons, but I've had time to rest and had time to actually practice, you know. So that's a good thing. But for the most part, I'm trying to, you know, I just released my first single. It's called Q. And it's an old remake of the Brothers Johnson, who was one of my biggest influence when I was a kid. And it's one of their kind of jazzier songs, but it's still funky, which is where I like to keep, you know, which you played on, thank God. Yeah. And I think it's doing pretty good. The radio just came out, but so I'm been down here all day trying to you know, work on the next one. So I'm about 5 or 6 tunes in, and I'm, you know, just trying to, you know, show other people who I am. I'm not just the side man in the back in the black.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So I'm trying to, you know, show another side of myself that a lot of people don't know. So I'm looking forward to this. It's challenging, it's scary, you know, and then now it's even more challenging because I can't even go out and support it.
Right.
You know? So we always have the show to play live to depend on, and now we don't really have that. So I'm having to, like you, with this beautiful way of interviewing people. It's really cool. I'm loving what y'all doing.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. I just want to tell these stories, man.
Yeah.
You know, to help people and also to highlight people who has made an impression on me. You know.
All right.
I feel like that's very important, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. So I've been able to be home with my family more. Watching my daughter, which a lot of times you know, if you're gone, you miss so much growing up. My oldest daughter, I missed so much of her growing up, but I'm able to be home. I'm cooking every day, every morning. You see my wife every day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, good, man.
It's good, you know. So we're just trying to reinvent myself now as an artist, as opposed to a sideman. So that's challenging within itself, you know, but still fun, still something new, still growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That never stops. It's something I found out. The more people I talk to, if you're 70, 80 years old, you're still growing, still developing new things and new ideas, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome, bro.
Yeah.
So you say you're home every day. When you don't have a bass in your hand, what do you do to clear your mind and kind of balance out life? Any hobbies or like practices or rituals that you do daily?
No, not really. I play golf, on the weekends for the most part. That's kind of a hobby, It's a great way to get out, get away from music, get away from uh really everything. You just be out uh, in the scenery, the grass, and the game itself, which is really
Yeah,
hard. But to be good at it, you got to practice. So I mean, that's a great way to kind of get out in the scenery and just play. And the next thing you know, it's 4 or 5 hours have gone by.
yeah.
And we started that actually on a Janet tour. A couple guys on a tour were playing, so that's a good way to if you got a day off, you can by the time you get up in the morning, go play around and come back and shower. It's dinner time.
Yeah,
Whole day
yeah,
is gone. So that's
yeah. So you've been playing over 20 years.
yep,
And your daughter actually plays golf in college.
yes,
She's
yeah,
on a golf scholarship in college.
yep.
She got that from you?
Well, I don't like to play with her anymore, but
Wait, could she beat you?
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I used to take her with me to the driving range when she was little, and I just noticed she had a great hand-eye coordination, and she could hit the ball. We got her some plastic clubs, and she could still hit it. And then we got her some real clubs, and we put her in a little camp,
Yeah,
summer camp thing for golf. And man, she just came out with a swing that we couldn't believe. So
yeah.
we just kind of,
Just nurtured it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
She's been playing, competing since she was like 9. So she's
Oh
22.
wow. Hmm.
So she's at University, it was Chicago State now. She was at a University of North Georgia. She transferred last year. So,
Hmm.
but this COVID thing, the season has been postponed. So,
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
I'm kind of bummed out. But hey, life.
Yeah,
Hopefully, they'll
yeah.
play in the spring.
That's for everybody, man.
Yeah,
It's done it for everybody.
yeah.
But man, anything you want the people to know, anything you want to share that we covered a lot of stuff, but I want to make sure I don't leave nothing out, man. Is there anything you want to share, man? You're a good dude, man. I think that's the first thing I noticed about you, man. Like the thing that gravitated me to you was not even the bass. It was who you were as a person, man. So I personally appreciate you for being that way, man,
Well, I
and
appreciate
even befriending me. So
it. And that's probably the first thing as far as the music business is concerned, especially when you're touring, because those tour managers, you could be a great player and excuse my language, and they would
mhm.
rather deal with the lesser of a player that's going to be really cool. So
Yeah,
if you can have both of those, I mean, that's a plus for you. If you can, you got to be professional. You got to know the music, but you got to live with these people for 8, 9 months. At least back in the day, a year, you'd be living with the same people. And
yeah,
we're all still friends today for the most part.
yeah.
So I would say just I try to put God first in everything I do. You know, and I think that's one of the reasons I've been blessed for so many years in this crazy business.
Hmm.
And now I'm in a new chapter, so I'm still expecting to be blessed on this.
Absolutely.
So I think that's first.
Yeah.
And I think somebody, a pastor, I heard him preach when he said that if all these politicians and all the stuff that's going on in the world today, social injustice, and if they were to put God first, then all of that would probably be resolved.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but
Absolutely.
so I think that's the biggest thing I would say. If you want to be in this business, it's challenging. You're going to have ups and downs, but that's life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I was gonna say. That's life, man.
Yeah.
That's life. Yeah. Last question, man.
Uh-oh.
What conversation would you have with your younger self?
Hmm.
Everything you done experience, life, family, the industry, raising kids. What would that conversation be with yourself at 20 years old, 25 years old?
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I would. I mean, all that history has kind of made me who I am. I don't know what I would change. Uh, Back then, I maybe I might have been. I think once I started working, I probably would have invested a little differently, like I mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
But as far as just being who I am and going after what I love to do, I don't think I would change anything about that. I mean, I think it's all part of who I am, and
Becoming, yeah,
it's kind of made me who I am. Actually, all these experiences and the failures, the you know the good
yeah,
times, it's all one body of work. So
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Where can people find you, man?
Oh, you can find me. Website is samsimsbass.com.
Okay,
My first single is everywhere digitally so right now, and has been played on. It's picking up radio station now, but it's been playing every day on Watercolors. I'm getting texts every day from that, so that's very cool.
okay,
But yeah, and expect more music in the coming months. I'm gonna try to drop something every couple months. New
okay,
thing
okay.
until
You on social media?
I'm on Instagram, official Sam Sims. That's it.
Okay, okay. Well, cool, man. Well, Sam, I appreciate you coming on, brother. I
I
consider you a friend, man. I consider you a real friend, man. You gave me plenty of advice and guided me when I got here to Atlanta, and beyond, man. You actually took me to Russia with you, man.
right.
My first time going to Russia, man. I appreciate that.
No
I
problem.
got to answer that phone and say, "Hey, man, you want to go to Russia?" Shoot, yeah, I want to go to Russia, man.
Yeah,
So I appreciate that,
no
man.
problem. It was so
Yeah,
cold, but it was a good experience. So
it was. We got there. It was what, -20?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but it was still fun for the most part. Yeah,
yeah.
cool, man. I
Cool,
appreciate
man.
you having me on, and man, good luck with it. It looks great.
Conversations and music. Yes, sir.
All right,
Conversations and music, bro. Thank you so much, man. I'll talk to you soon, bro.
all right. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Peace.